Hello there, everyone. How you doing? Thank you very much for coming along to my talk. I've called this the snappily titled "Keeping Yourself Safe When Working in Cybersecurity." I tried to come up with a better title, things like "When That Time the Police Made Me Want to Cry," "Help, I Want to Cry," things like that, but it just didn't work out. So I've gone for the very, very boring but descriptive, keeping yourself safe when working in cybersecurity. Just as a little bit of interest, what sort of people have we got in the room? Have we got people who make applications, makers? Anyone? Developers? Yeah, very good. Breakers? People who bust lots of stuff? Excellent. Researchers? Malware researchers? That sort of thing? Yeah, a couple of people, yes. Excellent stuff. Very good. Well, just a little bit about me. I'm a director of a local company, Vertical Structure. It's about the only time you're going to hear me mention my company name. The rest of the time, it's just a story really about me. I'm not here to sell anything. I'm not here to kind of make you come and buy my fantastic services or products or anything like that, but you are very welcome to do so. I'm a security and penetration tester. I'm a trainer. I'm a consultant, security consultant, contractor. And I've been working in the IT industry, I suppose, since about 2002. I'm working in this seemingly new world of cybersecurity, I suppose, for the last, about 6 or 7 years, something like that. So just a little bit about me, just because I'm up on stage and you have to listen to me. I'm going to tell you a little bit about who I am and how I got to where I am now. I started off in a very different profession. Maybe like some of you other people, I'm not sure. I started off as a stage manager in the theatre industry. I have an honours diploma from the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts in stage management and theatre production. My background wasn't originally in IT in any way, shape or form. After about 2 years of working in the theatre industry, I realised that I wasn't that fond of actors and I didn't really like directors very much either, which is kind of a limiting factor when you're in that industry. So I started doing some Open University courses, started retraining, started to come into my second career. And I'm very proud of the fact that I have a second career. I like working with people who have second careers as well. I find that they tend to be very, very focused on their second career. My adage is that when you've done a job that you hate and you find a job you love, you will never want to go back to the job you hate, and therefore you will work very, very bloody hard to make sure that you don't. So I managed to blag myself a job as a developer. I was working in PHP originally. Don't judge me for that, but I was working as a PHP developer. The company I was working for went belly up, and thankfully not thankfully, they didn't pay us for about 3 months, 2 months, something like that. But in that time, before they went belly up, managed to blag another job. I'm quite good at interviews and talking the talk. In that role, I stayed there for 10 years. I learned an awful lot of stuff. I worked for a local company that developed software for the oil and gas industry. I had a number of titles. I was a web applications developer. I was a systems administrator. I was a network administrator. I was a technical sales. I was after sales technical. My last title before I left was something like Management Information Systems Applications Infrastructure Architect. And if you can say that after a couple of beers later on, then you'll be doing really, really well. Worked with a lot of different oil companies. Lots of companies based in, mostly in the US. Did a lot of work around the world. Got to see an awful lot of places, and an awful lot of hotel rooms and meeting rooms and airport lounges in different parts of the world. And we worked with a lot of different oil companies, as I say. One of the companies that we started working with was a Russian oil and gas company, who I believe no longer exist. One of the things that Russians take very seriously, or maybe one of the very many things that Russian people take very seriously, is oil and gas and security around that oil and gas. We started working with them, and this was in about 2005, and they insisted on penetration and security tests starting to happen. Now, as developer and sysadmin and network administrator, it was fascinating, absolutely fascinating to watch what was happening, as within about, we kicked off at 9 o'clock. By 9:03, they were uploading malware to our servers. They were completely pillaging everything that we'd worked so hard to put in place. They were performing basic SQL injection flaws. I found it fascinating. I was tailing the logs and just watching and understanding and seeing how they'd broken into our applications and how they were doing this stuff. That was when I started to really think, yeah, that's really cool. That's what I want to do. So, cut a long story short. After a short while, working that company also went under after a while. But after a while, I started a company with a friend of mine. We wanted to not work for anybody else. We wanted to work for ourselves, do fun things, and to never have another boss again. But those of you who work for yourselves will realize that actually when you are self-employed or you contract into places, instead of one boss in your world, you actually now have 10 bosses who all want you all the time. It makes things a lot more interesting, makes things a lot more fun, and we do some really cool stuff. I'm very proud of what we do. But where this story is going is that I started contracting with a security company, with a company developing some really interesting software. It was after the London riots and before the Olympics in London. And I started doing a bit of work. It was one of those pieces of work where you initially get called in for, mine was a 10-day job. That was in May 2012, and I've been consistently working with them since then. So it's a nice thing. As I said before, the term cybersecurity, I think, was kind of in its infancy at that point. It wasn't really a cybersecurity company, and now every email I receive seems to have cyber in it in some way, shape, or form. Either cyber or GDPR. I don't know if you are all receiving those emails as well. So we were working with this company. We went a little bit outside of what we normally do, but we provide some services. We provided some installation work, some security testing, a few sysadmin roles, a few services, VPNs, a couple of dev environments, a bit of assistance here and there, lots and lots of bits and pieces. And it's been really gratifying to see that company grow from literally 3 people above a garage to, I think it's around about 40 people now. And we're still involved with them and still do a lot of work. But as I say, it was initially a short-term job, and it stretched into so far a 5.5-year engagement. But back to me, and that's what the story's about, is me. And I'm not here to, as I say, to sell anything. So I'm sure you've all seen this before. I'm not sure how it scales, but it's the typical, what my parents think I do, what users think I do, what society, etc. This is a story about how I very nearly went from bottom right to top right. Although I'm never sure in that in that stock image why the guy behind the computer has required to have a balaclava on. Maybe it's cold in the room, or I don't know. So my journey from bottom right to top right. So, has anyone heard of this thing called WannaCry? Anyone? Did you hear about it at all? It was this small thing earlier on in the year. It started around about the 12th of May, and it encrypted data on your hard drive. Basically, just encrypted everything, and there was a long list of documents and file suffixes that it encrypted. It then used one of the shadow brokers' SMB vulnerabilities to spread around the network. Initially, it was thought, obviously, and I'm preaching to the choir here. Initially, I thought it was all the older machines, and there were massive stories about Windows XP being the biggest, worst thing in the whole wide world, and everybody's going to be completely ruined because they were still running these Windows XPs. And actually, it was really interesting when researching about it that WannaCry affected mostly Windows 7 versions, as you'll see from the far left. That's taken from a Kaspersky report there. So what we had was page upon page of details about this new ransomware. It could be the biggest ransomware offensive in history. Was it targeted at the NHS? No, probably not. why the WannaCry malware caused chaos for the National Health Service in the UK. They seek to recover from global cyber attack as security concerns resurface. And then I love this one here. The ransomware meltdown experts warned about is here. Let's get all end of the worldy. I was going to put either a Carmina Burana or the 28 Days Later music on when I put those slides up, but I think the words do it for themselves. And then there's a message, obviously, that what happens after any of these events is that the inquest begins. The next story happens. What happens after the ransomware has happened. So I'd been reading about the new outbreak with great interest, same as probably everybody else in the room. Had avoided managing to touch it in any way, shape, or form. We'd made sure that that everything possible was patched, that everything had been rebooted, everything was looking pretty good from our point of view. We're discussing it with our clients and giving them advice about how to fix it, how to prevent it from happening, and we're wondering at the same time, actually the previous slide, was this the global ransomware meltdown that that we'd all heard about and were expecting? I'd been to a great talk. Has anyone come along to the BSides Belfast meetups? Every so often, yeah. There was a great talk last year from Porrig Donnelly, and it had been about ransomware, and I pulled out a few more of his slides and started having a look through and trying to understand a little bit more about the process that people use for launching these ransomware attacks. So where do I come into this? I'm a Northern Irish security consultant, tester, trainer, English, living in Northern Ireland. But during the weekend of the 12th of May to the Monday the 15th of May, in the eyes of the NCA, the PSNI Cybercrime Unit, and probably a few other agencies that I'm not aware of, or I'm not permitted to be aware of, myself, my business partner, and one of the people we work with were apparently prime suspects with involvement in the NHS ransomware attack that was called WannaCry. Devastated, obviously, a number of NHS trusts in the UK, as well as other organisations around the world, people like Telefonica, things like that. So I received this. I learned of my involvement in this, using air quotes, when I was at work one day, and I received a call from my father-in-law, who never phones me. He never wants to talk to me. But I received a phone call from my father-in-law, and he very scarily used the words, "There are some very serious gentlemen here who want to speak to you." And I thought, right, okay, cool. He handed his phone over to a very stern-sounding police officer who informed me that they would need to meet urgently to discuss my potential involvement in the NHS ransomware outbreak. They informed me that they were serving a warrant at my home, which entitled them to search the house. Doesn't scale hugely well, apologies. And I've also had to blank out my address and the people who signed it, addresses and all that sort of stuff. They were serving a warrant at my home, which entitled them to search the house and investigate all electronic goods within the house. Later discovered there was a warrant against my business partner's home address and also our office address. When they came in, they entered. There's the premises search record. They specify general wear and tear on my devices. I think that some of them have probably got more than general wear and tear on them, but yeah, they inventoried every piece of electronics in my house, which, as with most of you, was quite a significant undertaking. I have devices here, there, and everywhere. They did that over the course of the next few hours and did the same in my business partner's home as well. When I received the phone call, I didn't know what we were facing. I just was told, we need to meet to discuss your involvement or potential involvement. So I was wondering, had one of our servers been compromised? Was it being used as a bot? Was there something that was, kind of being used to send out messages or to, command and control servers or, something like that? That's what I was wondering. So we arranged to meet officers, the officers on the phone at our office. We don't advertise where our physical office is, so nobody was kind of aware of it, which was quite good because it gave us a bit of breathing space. During that breathing space, I firstly phoned very lovely local solicitors firm, Ford Campbell, the brilliant Kathy Matthews from Ford Campbell. If you're looking for a solicitor, let me tell you, she is absolutely brilliant. I never thought I would need to keep a solicitor's card in my wallet, but I do now. I also phoned my wife to explain what was going on. When I say explain what was going on, I phoned her to explain that I was going to meet the police officers at my office, and I didn't know what it was for, and I don't know if I'll be picking the kids up from school, and I don't know what's, I don't know. I failed in explaining to her what was going on because I didn't even know myself. She sounded confused, irritated. She actually asked me at one point, "Is there anything you need to tell me?" Which was nice, I thought, but there you go. So I went to the office. I met the officers, who were very nice, very, very professional, very focused, I think is probably the right word. And I explained that my solicitor would be joining us shortly. Sitting in an office, in a small office with 3 police officers in absolute silence, waiting for a solicitor to arrive, is one of the scariest experiences of my life, and I never hope to have that experience again. I didn't need to call a solicitor. I wasn't under arrest. I wasn't kind of being charged with anything, but I felt it was a good idea to help us to make sure that we all knew what was going on. So yeah, 10 minutes sitting around, waiting in absolute silence for things to start, for my solicitor to get there, and for things to kick off. I'd worked with one of the officers on a previous case, spoken to another one on CISP, so we all knew who each other were. We'd all come across each other in some way, shape, or form. And as I say, they were there, and they were investigating. They were absolutely doing their jobs. They were keen to ask questions though, and get things going. And from my point of view, I was very glad that they were, firstly, that they thought that this was suitable for us to do it in an office rather than I don't know if they'd have slapped handcuffs on, but escorting me to a police station in the back of a police car. I don't know if that would have happened, but I'm very glad that they gave us the opportunity to talk then. So our solicitor came along, and it all began, and it was nothing like this. It was all very. They didn't take me outside and you put my hand on a photocopier and tell me it was a lie detector or anything like that. There was no tricks, no games, nothing like that. It was questions asking me what was going on. So when the interview began, we were told our involvement in the NHS ransomware outbreak was that a Pastebin had been discovered, which had apparently originated from an IP belonging to us. And another one which mentioned the words NHS ransomware, and another one which stated NHS leak ransomware test, as shown in these images. Again, apologies for the scale up here. These are the 2 Pastebins, though. You can see NHS ransomware, and you can see NHS ransomware test, NHS leak ransomware test. So what's that? 1, 2, 3, 4. I've blurred out 2 words there. 5, 6, 7, 8 words in a couple of anonymous Pastebins. As you'll see, there are 159 views on this one, 74 views on this one. They're posted as a guest and as a guest, so they're anonymous. They're not coming from any account. They were posted on Tuesday, the 9th of May, 2017. The WannaCry outbreak started in earnest on Friday, the 12th of May. From these, there was an investigation which led to the warrants that we saw previously, which led to the search and seizure warrants being issued. For this, there were 8 police officers at my house, 3 of whom came along to our office. So there were 5 at my house, and 3 at my colleague's house, and 3 at the office who came along. I had no recognition of these pastes, but I did have a faint idea of where things may have gone awry. I got slightly less concerned because things started to fall in place. I thought I could start to solve their issue. One of the things I was very cautious about was I didn't want to be just kind of saying, yeah, it's to do with this, and it's them, and it's a client, and it's this, and it blah, blah, blah. So I wanted to make sure that we got the answers out nice and carefully and honestly. So I believed I could solve it within a few minutes. So the two IPs they mentioned, IP1 and IP2. IP1 in question belonged to a server which was set up to provide a VPN service for a particular client who do a lot of work in the realm of cybersecurity and breach alerts. So that was IP1. It's not used for anonymization in any way, shape, or form. It's designed as a corporate VPN. It's designed as a place to access certain IP restricted sources. IP2 belongs to our client who had been posting something on Pastebin. One of the salespeople for our client had been doing a demonstration of breach alert capabilities on Wednesday the 10th of May in response to a requirement from a trust, an NHS trust, regarding a ransomware issue that had taken place earlier on in the year, in January 2017. So one of those posts that we saw previously had been from our VPN server. One post had been from the user in England's home IP address. So those 9 words posted over 2 Pastebins. One post had come from IP that went back to us, and one post had come from another IP. Obviously, once they had the IP, it was a quick jump to do a very, very basic who is on the IP, who owns it. Oh, it must be these chaps over here. Here's my name. There's the other details. So that's how they were able to get to us so quickly. So, before I get to what we learned, the warrant that we were served with gave the police the right to extract information from and retain all electronic devices for examination in relation to home and work if required. So that would have been everything. That would have been laptops, phones, hard drives at home, backup drives, modems, routers, smart TVs potentially, anything that they felt was appropriate. As it was in the course of the interview with them, we were able to identify. I was able to call out the IP address of the VPN server to say to them, yes, I think it's this IP address. Is that correct? They're able to look on their notes and say, yes, it is. That's exactly correct. So we're able to identify what happened. But in the meantime, the police were in my house. They went through every single one of they gave a full and proper search of the house. They took logs of every piece of equipment in the house. They I believe, took notes of serial numbers. So now at least if I ever get burgled, and the insurance company asks me for a list of every electronic device, I'll be able to provide that. I don't know if you can get that under freedom of information. Does anyone know? So the warrant basically gave them the right to extract information from everything. So and as our solicitor advised us, that compels us to provide the police with the connection logs for the VPN and an image of the server for their examination. We were able to, again, one of the signs that we weren't, that things weren't going to go the worst for us after being able to explain what we thought had happened was that we were permitted to get them access to the logs and show them the grepping of the logs that we were doing. So we're able to show them the logs and say, there's a user connecting there. Do you see that string? That's the sign of a user connecting. Then we're able to go back and try and find dates and times. It was some of the fastest and most efficient grepping I've ever done, I managed to do it without any man pages or Googling, which sometimes is quite an achievement with some of them. We did have a bit of a disaster while we were attempting to prove our innocence, while we were attempting to prove what was going on. OpenVPN truncates and overwrites logs when it restarts. Okay, so if you're using OpenVPN, it truncates your logs when it restarts, depending on configuration, obviously. We didn't have this knowledge at the beginning, and had a bit of a code brown trouser time, as it were. The last restart on the OpenVPN server had which was on a Windows Hyper-V host, had been when, do you think? Just after the patches for the WannaCry issue had been released by Microsoft. So therefore, we didn't have the exact connection logs for the day that the pastes were posted on Pastebin at that particular time. So then we had to, it was hi-ho, and off to backups we go. And once again, I have a bit of advice here. Next time you're doing a restore exercise for any of your servers, imagine you have a policeman standing over your shoulder watching everything that you type and do, another one standing there getting very nervous and clicking his pen, and another one over there with a piece of forensic software who, with a forensic drive trying to, wanting to start examining stuff. It will make you work faster. It will make you work better. Try to think of that. So we retrieved the logs, brought them onto the same server. We're able to prove that they were accurate, showing the process of getting the logs from the backup server. Added another hour to what we were doing. And all the while, you're wondering what's going to happen. Are they going to seize our stuff? The same issue, would I be able to leave in time to pick up my children that I'd said to my wife I would do earlier in the day? While we were talking about this as well, there was a bit of a discussion, a snatch of a discussion that I overheard that they mentioned that there'd also been a raid launched against someone in England, and that had been performed by the NCA, the National Crime Agency. Later discovered that the guy in England who posted the Pastebin posts, his house was raided at 7:30 on a Monday morning. They seized all of his electronic goods and devices. It just went hell for leather, and they didn't return them and they imaged them, and they did what they had to do, and it took them about 3 weeks to get all the stuff back to him. So from our point of view, the next 4.5 hours were spent proving our case, proving that we'd done it, proving that we had evidence that this person was connected at this time. We provided evidence of the application and why they would have been posting this stuff up online. We spent the next 4.5 hours or so proving our case, retrieving a server image and getting it downloaded, which was a not inconsiderable task on its own, considering I was working off the hotspot on my I was working tethered off my phone, downloading a 12 gig disk image from a remote source. That really helps with the old monthly bill when it comes in. And let me tell you that nothing downloads as slowly, like with the grepping and with the backup and restore, nothing downloads as slowly as when a policeman is watching you download it. So we then had, this was our warrant. This was the back of the warrant. Again, apologies for the quality of the picture there, but we were compelled to provide logs for examination, image of the server, and as I say, not a not insignificant task in itself. So what did we learn? We learned that Pastebin log everything you put up there. They log location, they log IP, they log lots and lots of bits of information about what you're doing. And they give up the data very quickly if for a legitimate law enforcement request. That's what their terms of service say, it's what they should be doing. In our case, the investigation started on a Friday. From what we understood, they found this on the Friday, and the PSNI cybercrime unit had a warrant ready to go apparently on Sunday evening. So that was quite a rapid step. What else did we learn? We learned that law enforcement agencies talk a lot and can be very efficient. So in our case, the NCA spoke to some people. We found out that some information had come from various agencies in the UK and further afield. The NCA spoke to their US counterparts, came back to the NCA, came back to the PSNI cybercrime unit, went to a county court judge for signing of our warrants, and then went to me. It was a county court judge. I have the signature on my warrant to prove it. Apparently in Northern Ireland, there's special, that part of the legislation requires that instead of a magistrate to sign it, there's a county court judge is required to sign it, which means that there are county court judges out there who get their golf interrupted at least once a week to sign warrants for these, for raids, for things like this. We also learned that, if you look at that, there was a lot of time and money spent tracking us down. You know, that's a request from the UK-wide NCA to somewhere in the States, to back to the NCA, back to the PSNI, back to the county court, back to us. 8 officers in our house, 3 in the office, 3 in my colleague's house. A lot of people, a lot of time, a lot of money. It seems like a very it seems like there shouldn't have been that. We shouldn't have caused that to happen in the first place. What else did we learn? We learned that a search and seizure warrant can be obtained on the basis of an IP address posting a relatively non-specific text message to a public forum. We were unlucky to get involved. I think those messages, they're just text, they're not malware. Nobody's uploading, sharing malware like, some people are doing in this room, I'm sure, sharing it to, Mega or one of those services to share it around your colleagues or your research, associates. But the search and seizure warrant can be obtained on the basis of an IP address on a very, very non-specific text message. Now, this was a bit of a bigger deal because WannaCry was being investigated in a very, very stringent manner because it had to be, because it had nearly brought the NHS to a standstill. So, we heard earlier, we're talking about, malware research and, looking at ransomware and looking at this malware that comes in. The involvement can be accidental. You upload a command and control script to Pastebin, which is later used by somebody else. You upload something to a public forum that is then used or adapted in another forum. Does that then make you the original author of that malware or of that issue? You've got to be very, very careful. How do you upload and share that information with others? Does it link back to you in any way? It probably should do, but you've got to be very, very careful. What about new exploits and vulnerabilities when you're sharing them or working out if they're accurate or if they're true, if they work? How do you share that amongst your group of researchers and friends without being caught up in something like this and wasting the police's time? Some organizations will be more protected than others. There'll be universities, people from university here, people from CSIT, people from UCD or something like, or other places where you have a little bit more leeway because your IP addresses will always come back to a security research part of the university, and they're able to talk to you. Have a look at some of the other content posted on Pastebin. And once again, apologies. I searched on Pastebin for docs, trying to see if there was information about people being doxed or how to dox or what was going on. There's loads. I searched for the word jihad on on Pastebin. See if there's information about that. There's tons and tons and tons of pieces of information. Once again, I believe we were unlucky to get involved in this. It was the wrong place at the wrong time. What else did we learn? We learned that the seizure of all electronic goods for imaging and cataloguing would have been completely within scope. Thankfully, it wasn't actioned in our case because the police were great at they listened to the story, they believed the story, they proved the story. We were able to prove the story to them and prove that we hadn't done anything wrong. But this would have included, as I mentioned before, laptops, phones, hard drives, encryption keys. Give up your encryption keys for your GPG or your hard drives at home, passwords, servers, tablets, everything would have been brought in, imaged, and taken away. Apparently, the image of our VPN server, which is now dead and will never come back again, the VPN server will be kept forever as well. So that's gone into storage somewhere, and it'll never be deleted. It'll always be kept as I suppose a reminder for us of what happened. So consider your company. How long could your company operate without these things? Without your laptop? Without your phone? Could you afford to go out and purchase new laptops, phones, whatevers for your staff? In some cases, bail conditions state that you're not allowed to use electronic devices for a period of time. Things like that. Can your company operate without those bits and pieces? Consider your business continuity plan. It's a very, very important thing. So what else did we learn? It probably wouldn't have looked like that, but the police could, and they would have completed a forced entry, including breaking down the door if my father-in-law hadn't been in the house, thankfully doing some painting. So that would have meant that my father-in-law already thinks that I'm now up the top right of my image at the beginning, but you know, they would have effected a forcible entry, which probably would have made things worse. You know, if they probably wouldn't have listened to the story so much if they hadn't had free access to the house and been able to get in and and see stuff. If we'd been there, my family, including my 2 small kids and my wife, would have been removed from the house while the police searched, catalogued, and questioned. What else did we learn? We learned that this is the rights of the occupier and owner of property seized. And what this says is, and I'll read it to you here, it's the section in red, section 10. If premises have been searched by force, every attempt will be made to secure them. Under the Police and Criminal Evidence NI Order 1989, compensation is not payable for damage during a properly conducted search. So if you're raided by the police and they have to cause damage to enter, then you are not covered for any costs. So I would have been out for not only a solicitor's bill, but a new front door, the respect and love of my father-in-law, and a few other bits and pieces, incidental bits and pieces. What else did we learn? I'm not sure what we would have done if we hadn't been able to provide the logs. I don't know what state things would have got to. This have been when the seizure of all of our stuff would have started? Thankfully, we didn't have to find out, but that's the state in which we presume. It can feel sometimes like you're having to prove your innocence. This is different to how I imagined it would be, but when the police come with even a slightly compelling case, you have to prove that you didn't do that. The punishment of having our stuff seized would probably have been a considerable setback for our business. We wouldn't have been able to claim on insurance for police grabbed our stuff, if you know what I mean. I'm not sure there's a thingamajig for that. But keep your logs. It may help to prove your innocence. Back up your logs. Take them off your service. If you're providing services in this way, or just provide if you're doing stuff around with sensitive material, back up your logs. Test your backed up logs. Send your logs to another location and then test them again. Use some software to help you understand those logs and to make sure that you've got them. We've got clients using Kibana. We've seen people using Splunk. Things like that. Just make sure you have your logs. It's a very bad situation to get into. What else did we learn? Solicitors, and used a gold-plated background there for a reason. Solicitors can be very expensive, but they were also worth every penny for us. They made sure everything was done the right way. They made me feel confident about speaking to the police, about providing everything that I needed to provide, about understanding the warrant and what it meant. I'm longer in the tooth than some of the more junior, some of the junior people that we work with. I didn't have Code Brown immediately. There are some junior researchers who they might not have known what to do. They might not have realized that calling a solicitor would help them. They might not have had the funds to be able to to call someone in to spend 6 hours just sitting there listening and making sure things were done right. So they are expensive, but they're worth every penny. Hours of Ford Campbell, that's their details there. They're not sponsoring this event in any way, shape, or form, or anything like that. If you have any problems, I thoroughly recommend speaking to them. They are brilliant. We love them. They now get they're top of our Christmas card list every year now, we're very grateful to them for their help. More learning. Don't work from home or perform research from home without a connection to the office. If you are sharing stuff from office to if you're sharing stuff and your home IP address pops up on a list somewhere, it's you that's going to be that's going to have the problem. Your IP address is not anonymized. Your IP address is obviously logged by these telcos in various places. Using Tor, you're gonna find yourself a level of anonymization. But if our for instance, if our client had been using Tor and also posted one from our IP address, then we might have found ourselves in a different situation. The question, why were you using Tor? Why was somebody using Tor to post exactly that message? Why was somebody doing this? What have you got to hide? Why are you using an anonymization software? Questions that shouldn't really be difficult to answer, but which are things that you've got to be aware of. Working from home or from a relative's home. Imagine working from your mum's house and your address gets, and her IP address, or your mum or dad's house, or your IP address gets logged against something like this. You do not want that phone call from your mum or dad saying, there's police here and they want to speak to you. Trust me, it's not nice. It'll be a waste of time and money for everyone concerned. I dislike the fact that we wasted, the police time was wasted looking for, 2 Egypts in Northern Ireland and 1 in England about something that, shouldn't have got to that stage. Protect yourself. Don't force the police to investigate. Don't do something that's going to make the police investigate. They don't have many tools at their disposal apart from warrants and searches. Don't waste their time by uploading something stupid to a public resource, public space like that. It's expensive and time-consuming, and as I say, they don't have many tools at their disposal apart from these warrants and searches. So just be aware of that. Protect yourself. Your office IP or a known IP is always a better thing to be caught up in something like this than your personal IP address. There's potentially some brand recognition for law enforcement. Say, Black Duck or Liberty or BT are doing some malware research or some investigation. Then that's a different thing to some idiot on a NTL not NTL Virgin Media connection at home. That's a whole different world. So what did we learn? The officers we met were a lot more pleasant, professional, and willing to listen than I imagine this chap would have been. I imagine the actions and those of your clients and employees, both online and offline, have consequences. Warrants and events like this may cause you issues. So, for instance, I have a security clearance. I run a code club for which I've been for young people in Hollywood. We're looking for volunteers if anyone would like to come along and join in, by the way. I run a code club, so now when I go to fill in my clearance forms for either that or the other bits and pieces, will the fact that a warrant's been issued in my name, in my company's name, against my home address, will that feature? Will that be an issue? I don't know. Other repercussions that I'm not aware of yet. I tell you one thing, my neighbors were fascinated and very interested to know why there was a marked police car sitting outside my house and lots of strange gentlemen with backpacks on walking in and out the house. I think some of them even popped over to say hi just so that they could understand who it was, because they're like that. We were definitely the talk of the road and got invited to a few drinks parties to explain ourselves afterwards, which was kind of cool. So what else did we learn? My father-in-law, as I say, thinks I'm some sort of crime boss. And I wouldn't rush to another meeting with these officers in a similar circumstances. They were very courteous, very professional, very pleasant, and willing to listen, which was the key thing. They were willing to listen. But I'm not sure I would like to be, in a room with them, waiting for a solicitor for another 10 minutes, or even the rest of the 4 hours. So from now on, what have I learned? I would like to stay more as a cubicle junkie down the bottom here, or kind of standing up, talking, giving training sessions, or breaking people's stuff after we've made them sign pieces of paper that big. We've learned don't provide VPN servers to people that go back to our own IP addresses. We're learning to make sure that we stay more bottom right than going anywhere near the top right from now on. And what else did we learn? We learned that Hollywood County Down is a very, very long way from Pyongyang. So that's my story. The takeaways that I would say is just be careful. Look after yourselves when you're researching, when you're understanding what's out there. Be very aware of the fact that you that you don't want to cause the police to have to come and knock on your door, either in a friendly way or an unfriendly way. So, apart from that, are there any questions? Has anyone got anything they'd like to ask? Yes, Mark. It's almost like I placed you there. That's pretty good, isn't it? If a more explicit paste? Yeah. Well, I think, yes, that would have been a very beneficial thing, that in this case, the organization, they were looking for specific terms and keywords. I think in this case, having I know that the solution that they've come up with is that they put a hash into each paste, which is an MD5 reversal, which hopefully people will be able to break, an MD5 hash of the words, this is a test post by company X. For any more details, please contact blah, 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 blah. And it's they've been very careful to kind of watermark posts. So yes, watermarking what you do. Don't be flagging up saying, don't be trying to hide when you're doing these sort of things. Brilliant, thank you. Anybody else? Yes, hello. It was more than that. It was more than that. So it was more than that. So when we add up the cost of me and my business partner's day away from work, because we were locked in rooms, separate rooms, I'll tell you, solicitor, the day after to kind of recover from the hangover of all of this stuff, and then and then the solicitor's bills. It was an expensive Monday, put it like that. It was sort of Monday that we don't like to we don't like to repeat. And it would have been more expensive if they chainsawed my door apart, which would have happened if my father-in-law hadn't been there. Anybody else? No? Brilliant. Well, I'll be around about for a wee while if anyone has any questions, if there's anything that pops up. But thank you very much for coming and listening.